back to the channel. Welcome back to another reaction video. We got why the 49ers are at an extremely pivotal point. Let's check this out.
The San Francisco 49ers
finished
the 2024 season
my hair
with a
is fucked.
6-11
I'm so glad I get my
record
hair
and missed the
done
playoffs for the
next
first
week,
time
bro.
since 2020.
I'm tired of this shit. I'm gonna keep it
For
above.
the 49ers, their 2024 season resembled their 2020 season in a lot of ways. They were coming off of a Super Bowl loss, they had countless injuries, and they couldn't quite get over the hump. And one of the biggest problems with the 2024 49ers was even when they were healthy, and I say this with air quotations around the word healthy because they were truly never healthy, was they couldn't quite get out of their own way. And the first half of their season perfectly encapsulates what I mean by this. They beat the Jets by double digits on Monday night in Week 1 and looked good, and they looked like the 49ers. But then the following week, they lost in Minnesota and then lost a very weird game to the Rams in Week 3 before battling back to 500 in Week 4 with a win over the Patriots. They then proceeded to lose to the Cardinals.
I feel like the Niners Super Bowl window is slammed shut now, bro. Especially after they give Purdy with like 50 mil a year. I think it's over because like they just lost too much talent, bro. Especially on the defense. They lost Hufanga, they lost Travarius Ward, they lost Javon Hargrave, Leonard Floyd. They lost too many pieces, bro. Dre Greenlaw, like they just lost too many pieces to be able to compete, bro. Especially in the NFC West.
Up by this point, and they proceeded to go
you got
2-7
teams like Seattle, you got the Rams.
This
Cardinals could be good.
Video we're going to discuss why the San Francisco 49ers
then they traded Debo.
A pivotal point in their franchise's timeline. We're going to break down how we got here.
Jordan Mason gone, Elijah Mitchell, like,
and a whole lot more. And there is a lot to break down in today's video.
Aaron Banks, Jalen Moore, like they literally lost about half of their fucking roster.
We are starting today's video by discussing some of the players the 49ers lost this offseason, and we'll start with Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is a very interesting player.
Y'all think Deebo gonna have a good season this year with the Commanders?
But he's not close to being the best in the NFL by any stretch of the imagination. And for as much production as Deebo can bring to an offense, his contract situation was always going to be complicated because of him running the football, and not just undesignated end-arounds or trick plays once a game either. Over the past 4 years, Deebo has carried the football 37 or more times in each season, and I know that may not seem like a lot, but the touches add up, and due to this, Deebo is not a normal 29-year-old receiver. He's a player that has a lot more wear and tear on his body than.
No wonder why this nigga could never stay healthy these last couple seasons.
Receiving season to his name, which was back in 2021. He had a good 2023 season as he had over 1,100 total yards and 12 touchdowns after you factor in the rushing numbers, but he's not the player he was a couple of years ago. And Deebo's contract was messy for the 49ers, and per Over the Cap, Deebo has a dead cap hit of over $30 million in 2025, meaning the 49ers are going to pay him over $30 million to not play for them in 2025.
Oh, the Niners are
fucked. You may have heard that the Commanders were taking on Deebo's remaining contract, and they are, but the 49ers are taking on Deebo's dead cap specifically for the 2025 season, so they are completely clear of Deebo's contract in 2026.
No, now it makes sense why they couldn't re-sign nobody, bro.
Is Washington took on Deebo's contract.
I was wondering, like, what the fuck are they doing not
the
signing
money
these
doesn't
guys,
just go away.
They couldn't.
And teams do this regularly to unload contracts. Another example was the Bills taking
they about to go crazy in this draft. They got 11 draft picks.
Unfortunately, the 49ers also have dead cap hits for Eric Armstead, Travarius Ward, Leonard Floyd, and several other players, and they have the most dead cap.
And look, and all these niggas are not even here anymore, gang. That is tough. That is tough. Oh my gosh.
That money out of any NFL team in 2025, at over $7.
They had it. They had their chance, bro, to win a Super Bowl.
You pay players,
they just can never capitalize.
Try to win a Super Bowl, especially with a quarterback on a rookie contract, the way Brock Purdy was over the past couple of years. And sure, things can get a little messy from an accounting standpoint to try and get under the salary cap, but the reality is, if you win a Super Bowl during this time period of going all in, it does not matter. Banners fly forever, and if they have to spend a year eating dead cap money, everyone in the organization, including the owner writing a check, would be fine with that. But one of the issues with the 49ers in 2025 that they are more or less using as part of a rebuild or retool year is when they paid guys in the past, like the aforementioned Eric Armstead, who is now with the Jags, and Travarius Ward, who signed with the Colts this offseason, is they had to push money down the road so they could get under the cap for whatever specific season. So despite the 49ers releasing Eric Armstead in March of 2024, per over the cap. He had dead cap hits of $10.3 million in 2024 and $15 million in 2025 from the 49ers. And people like to say the NFL salary cap is a myth, and it is to a degree.
Yeah, it definitely is. Because, nigga, I thought the Saints were, like, in crazy cap hell, but they're able to sign and re-sign players.
At some point, the
like,
bill
gang.
always comes due. And we bring that up because
you can't do that in Madden, I tell you that,
relative
unless
to
you
other
turn
NFL
salary
teams
cap off.
because of how much dead cap money they have in 2025. This also isn't a don't pay good players message because you have to pay for talent, but there were several bad contracts on the 49ers roster last year, and Deebo Samuel was a big one. So a lot of this offseason for the 49ers was simply shedding bad contracts and retooling their roster for 2025 and beyond. But their moves for the long-term outlook of the 49ers don't stop there, and a lot of the moves they made this offseason were simply business decisions. You often hear that the NFL is a business, and Deebo Samuel going to the Commanders was a business decision for the 49ers. They simply didn't think Deebo was going to be worth the money that he was owed to play for the 49ers in 2025, and I thought the writing was kind of on the wall, given that they selected a receiver in the first round last year,
Ricky,
while still negotiating a long-term contract with Brandon Ayuk. But there's three big players.
Yeah, Ricky gonna have to step up this year.
Owed a lot of money. One of which
Ayuk still coming off that it was a torn ACL, MCL, LCL, something like that.
He's coming off of 3 straight All-Pro seasons and 4 straight Pro Bowl seasons. And whether you know this or not, George Kittle is actually coming off of back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. But, and there's always a but, he will be 32 years old in October, and whether this is fair or not, once you get past the age 30 mark as a skill position player, basically any position.
Shit, tight ends can play for a long ass time.
Besides the point, you are pretty much on a year-by-year basis. Unless you are guaranteed a lot of money the following season, how you perform the previous season is the ultimate what have you done for me lately league when you are past the age of 30. And George Kittle's final year of his deal is in 2025, and because of the way that the 49ers negotiated the contract, or the way that they did the contract, he has a void year next year, and if they wish to bring George Kittle back in a year where he would turn 33, then they can maneuver.
There's no way they let him go, right?
Previously, and George Kittle would still be a 49er, but for the sake of George Kittle's career as a 49er, he is in the final year of his deal, and again, like we said, it is a now or never year for not just George Kittle, but also for Trent Williams, who is 37 years old and missed some time last year. And right now, Trent Williams is owed over $38 million in 2026. And
shit, he deserved every penny of that.
The 49ers signed off on paying a 38-year-old Trent Williams over $38 million in 2026.
Best tackle in the league, bro.
Unfortunately had an injury heading into the 2024 season and obviously was not the same.
Now, what they gonna do with CMC, though, bro? Like, I mean, the last season, like the first season, he really dealt with injuries for real. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. Because CMC also getting older. You know how running backs be when they get to a certain age. Does CMC still have a lot left in the tank, bro? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see because they don't really have anybody behind him anymore. They trade away Jordan Mason. They let Elijah Mitchell go. They still got Isaac Guerrero, I believe. I would think they would draft a running back in one of the later rounds, but I don't know, bro.
He was the Offensive Player of the Year in 2023 and scored 0 touchdowns the following year in 2024. So given that he will be 30 years old next year, that is not a promising sign for the sake of Christian McCaffrey's outlook as a 49er.
They got an old-ass roster,
like
bro.
Said, with the 30-year-old threshold, that is obviously accelerated for a player like Christian McCaffrey, who has a lot more touches on his body and a lot more wear and tear than other players, and he obviously plays the running back position, and there's been a lot of discussion around whether to pay running backs or not, and Christian McCaffrey is pretty.
You better pay running backs, nigga.
This is all on the brinks of Brock Purdy getting.
Running backs need more respect, gang. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
What Brock Purdy will get, although I do think it will be north of $50 million per year. And I know there will probably be a crowd that says, well, what if they trade Brock Purdy? But here's the reality for the San Francisco 49ers. They traded 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance, and he is one of the biggest draft busts in NFL history, period. He threw 5 career touchdown passes, and they traded multiple first-round picks to go up and get him, thinking he was going to be their guy. They lucked out by finding Brock Purdy. I don't think they're going to play with fire a second time and say, you know what, Brock, we'll trade you for a first-round pick and change. No. They're going to pay Brock Purdy, and it's just a matter of both sides coming together, which I think they will. And I'm sure $200 million or $250 million or whatever the number Brock would be looking for will certainly change his tune in terms of him getting paid. But this all plays into why it is a now or never draft for the 49ers, because once the old guys go out, or once the great players go out that once got paid and that they were on the surplus value part of their contracts, and once they are now on the opposite of that, where they are getting paid more than what they are worth, you have to be able to replenish talent. The Eagles just did a tremendous job of that over the past couple of years, whether it was Jalen Carter, whether it was Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, Devontae Smith, who recently got paid, but you get the point. They did a tremendous job of building through the draft, so did the Detroit Lions for that matter, and they are going to have to pay all of those guys soon. Now, I know Devontae Smith got paid, but you understand the point that I'm trying to make. The 49ers had a surplus value in Brock Purdy over the past couple of years because he was one of the lowest paid players, not just at his position, but in the entire NFL, while providing extreme production. And what I mean by surplus value is exactly that. Jamar Chase is another good example where he was not paid $35 or $40 million in 2024, yet gave the Bengals an offensive player of the year type season as he won the triple crown at the receiver position. So whenever you have to get rid of the Deebo Samuels, the Dre Greenlaws, who was paid more than the 49ers were going to want to pay, and eventually Trent Williams and maybe George Kittle, although that's to be determined, you get the point. You have to be able to replenish through the draft, and that's why the 2025 draft for the 49ers is so critical, and why, in a lot of ways, it is a now or never draft for them. Now, the 49ers are in an interesting situation relative to the rest of their division. While I do think the Rams are in a good position in 2025 to seriously compete and possibly go to the NFC Championship game or even the Super Bowl, I don't look at them from a long-term perspective the way I do other teams across the league like the Lions, Eagles, or Bills, or several other teams for reference. Now, the Rams are obviously very good, but the one thing I really worry about with their future is what they are going to do with the quarterback position in the post-Matt Stafford
3,700 yards, 20
Matt Stafford is 37, and I know they signed Jimmy G this offseason, but I don't think Jimmy G is the long-term answer for the Rams. Now, if the Rams do find a long-term solution at the quarterback position in what would be the post-Matt Stafford era, then based on their drafts over the last couple of years, by bringing in guys like Puka Nacua, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Jared Verse, and Braden Fisk, and plenty of others, then I would put them in the same basket as the other premier teams from a long-term perspective. I like Mike McDonald a lot as a defensive mind, and I do think the Seahawks will eventually figure things out from a roster standpoint themselves, but I also don't think they are going to be a Super Bowl contender in 2025, and it honestly has nothing to do with Sam Darnold or Geno Smith. It has more to do with the interior offensive line and even the long-term question marks at right tackle too.
So they better go all in on offensive line to draft,
they have
bro.
a really solid team.
I know they general manager think like guard is the most overpaid position, but bro,
very high floor,
you gotta replace some of those guys, bro.
But if you ask me when it came hell or high water, if I would ever take this team to legitimately go to the Super Bowl, the answer in 2025 would be no. Even with that being said, the Seahawks do present a challenge for the 49ers because they're not a pushover, and if you told me they would make the playoffs this year, Seattle that is, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I mean, they went 10-7 last year and missed the playoffs.
Playoff contender one week, then completely lay an egg the following week. Kyler Murray is so up and down as a player that I also question the Cardinals' ceiling, even despite me thinking they are doing a lot of things right from a long-term perspective. I love that they brought in Josh Sweat in free agency and could very easily see them addressing the interior defensive line in the first round of the draft to effectively complete their defensive line. But until we see this team truly complete an NFL season and win a playoff game and look good in the process, I'm always going to question the ceiling of the Arizona Cardinals. And to bring this back to the 49ers, they're in a unique situation because they're quietly in one of the best divisions in football. I think we would all be surprised if the Cardinals or Seahawks went to the Super Bowl this year, but even with that being said, both of those teams have very high floors and are not easy teams to beat. And this doesn't apply to just the 49ers, but really every team in the NFC West for that matter too. But when you know every team in the division is going to be a very difficult team to beat, and you know each team has a high floor that could make the postseason in any given year, that adds pressure to each team's draft strategy, and it adds to how much each draft pick matters. And I know we discussed
why has this nigga not been cut yet, bro?
But this only adds to how much them missing
unless he has a bounce back year.
2023 draft class hurts them in the present day. This also doesn't factor in how good the rest of the NFC is, and the fact that
this draft class right here that they had, bro, the best player out of this class gotta be like Jair Brown, right? Out of this 2023 draft class. Because Ronnie Bell no longer there. D. Winters hasn't really played much. Neither has Cam Latu. I don't know, bro.
Getting back to a Super Bowl,
They got a
you
lot
may
of
not run
like
into another
young
NFC West
talent
team, but you
that's
may
not
run into
starting.
Philly,
So
Detroit, Washington, or
they
Tampa
better-
Bay in the process.
gotta do something with that.
And not that any NFL game is easy, but playing in the NFC West in particular is brutal before the season even starts, because it's not an exaggeration to say any team can win that division year in and year out.
Same with
So
the
for
NFC
49ers
South.
to try and reclaim the NFC West and to have the level of success they had over the past half decade and change, which included 4 conference championship game appearances in 5 years, including 2 Super Bowl appearances, which is downright insane, by the way. What should their 2025 draft actually look like? And one thing I didn't mention earlier in the video, though I do want to give credit to John Lynch in the scouting department, was nailing the 2024 draft class, which included one of the biggest steals in Dominic Pooney and a player they could build around in their run game in the future in Isaac Guerrero, and there's several other players. And I also think the best is yet to come for wide receiver
Ricky
Pearsall, who, as we know, was shot before the season started last year. And first and foremost, I'm glad he's still with us. I'm glad he's okay, but he
Facts.
still played
God was
football
definitely with
after
him, man.
surviving that tragedy last year. And I do think the best is yet to come.
Ricky
for
gonna have a
Pearsall
breakout
and
season, man. I'm
ultimately
telling
the
you right now.
2024
He gonna have a
draft
breakout
class.
season this
But
year.
what about their 2025 class? Well, they have 4 picks in the top 100, and I do think at pick 11 that the first pick should be used on the trenches, whether it's at guard, whether it's at edge, whether it's interior defensive line, although I will say I don't think the value will align for them to take an interior defensive lineman at pick 11, so I do think the best
Tyleik
bet
Williams.
for them at pick 11 is to go edge, whether it's Mike Green, which would be my preference, or maybe a little rich for a guy like Donovan Ezaraku. I would prefer Mike Green.
Might be
to
an idea for me
Ezaraku
for my
or
next
even
mock
James
draft, not
Pierce
gonna lie.
Jr., and Abdul Carter certainly is not going to be falling to pick 11, as he will be on a plane to whichever team he gets drafted by and to whichever city by that point in the draft. But my point is, I think edge makes the most sense at pick 11 based on where we think the board will play or how we think the board will play out at that point. It is also worth mentioning that Will Johnson will probably be available, as his stock has slipped over the past 6 months due in large part to a down 2024 and ultimately injuries that have nagged him throughout the draft process. Now, the 49ers have 4 selections in the top 100, and we just discussed these scenarios at pick 11, but they also have selections at pick 43, 75, and 100, and they have 3 more picks between 100 and 150, and technically 3 between 100 and 147, meaning they have 7 picks in the top 147 of the 2025 draft. They have a lot of draft flexibility and able to maneuver up and down the board as they please. And there's one type of player that I would really like the 49ers to go after in the 2025 draft, and it's what I like to call a fire hydrant defensive tackle. There's 3 players we're going to mention, but the main reason that I would really love for them to go after a run-stuffing defensive tackle who will admittedly bring very limited upside as a pass rusher is because for over a third of your schedule, before you can even think about the wild card divisional conference championship round of the playoffs, you have to be able to get out of your division. And for 6 of your 17 games, no matter how you slice it, you are playing Kyron Williams, you are playing Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and James Conner and Trey Benson. So with that being said,
That is
I
tough,
would not
I'm not
mind them
gonna
at
lie.
all going up and trying to get a Tyleik Williams from Ohio State, who I think is a really good player and who does a really good job against the run. And if you do not go up and get Tyleik Williams, then you have Jordan Phillips from Maryland, who is also a really good run-stuffing defensive tackle, or a Jamari
Oh my
Caldwell,
gosh.
who is in your backyard at the University of Oregon. The 49ers need to be able to stop
That
the
nigga
run,
need
and
to
they need to be able
shade
to do
that
that in a
shit.
big way if they have any intention of making a
Yo.
postseason run in 2025. The reason that I place so much emphasis on the 49ers drafting a run-stuffing defensive tackle is because they do not have a good run-stuffing defensive tackle on their roster currently, and there's nothing more frustrating than watching a team continuously pound the rock up the middle, knowing they can get 3, 4, 5, 6 yards of carry every time, and knowing that they know that you can't stop it. And that's key to winning big football games. And I don't think it's unrealistic for the 49ers to walk out of the 2025 draft with a Mike Green to pair next to Nick Bosa for the next 4 or 5 years, like we
Oh my
talked
goodness,
about
what
at
a
Surf
spin
draft
move,
with
bro.
a Mike Green.
Mike
to pair
Green is
next to Nick
disgusting.
Bosa for the next 4 or 5 years, like we talked about at
And he
Surf
got
with
a
value
great
with
ghost
Mike
move as
Green
well.
bringing good production, and then to go up and trade for a guy like Tyleik Williams, or maybe a Jordan Phillips from Maryland, or even an Azariah Thomas from Florida State, a corner who would help bolster their secondary. If the value is there for the 49ers to draft an interior offensive lineman to really boost the interior offensive line after losing Aaron Banks in free agency, rather than relying on Ben Barch, who has not been good for the majority of his NFL career, I would be all for that too. The bottom line with the 49ers in the 2025 draft is to build the trenches and to build for a better tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel tremendously, and we are closing in on 200,000 subscribers. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.
Hey man, shit. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Y'all let me know what other NFL videos I want to react to. Without further ado, I'm out.
I'ma make them feel me, make them people when they show me. And if you don't know me, I'ma make sure that you know me. I hate to say it, but I really think I'm broke. But I know I'm chosen, I really know I'm chosen. I know I'm chosen. I was just lost a year ago, but now I'm focused. When good at sports, this microphone can be my trophy. Not taking drugs, I found a better way of coping.